recording up. There we go. And I just got to get back to my script for the night. Where'd it go? There it is. All right. So I would like to introduce our speaker, Margaret Fero, aka Maggie. She is passionate about information security, technical writing, and interdisciplinary connections. She currently holds the GSEC, GCIH, and GCIA security certifications. She's written UX copy, compliance documentation, and user-facing documentations for a variety of industries. She's also spoken at conferences including the O'Reilly Open Source Convention, or OSCON, ToorCon, Abstractions II, and Write the Docs Day Australia. She's also one of the coordinators for Write the Docs Bay Area, which is how I know her. Anyways, everyone, please give a warm welcome to Miss Maggie Fero.
Thank you. Am I on mute?
No, you are not.
You're good. All right. I am not seeing that it's being recorded, and I know we've promised a lot of people recordings of the talk. So
it is being recorded.
It is? All right.
Yes.
That is a terrible UX decision. It used to have a red frame when you were presenting and it was being recorded, and now it is gone. Well.
It just has a little flashing thing in the upper left-hand corner.
It does not on my screen anymore. There's just a really tiny dot for screen sharing.
I've got a little red dot that says it's recording.
Yeah,
no, I don't see that.
They took it away from the presenter. Oh well.
No.
It doesn't show up on my iPad either.
Are you using two screens?
I am using 3 screens.
Oh, well, you should see it on one of them. But anyway.
All right. So tonight we are going to talk a little bit about the Mosaic Theory of information security and how that can be useful to technical writers in particular. First, we are going to start with my barrage of disclaimers. I am not a lawyer. I am not a financial advisor. I am not the SEC. I am not in any way entitled to make expert judgments on what is or is not legal or insider trading. This whole talk is provided without warranty or guarantee. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. I am going to talk about how legal and financial concepts work in a general sense, based on a layperson's understanding, so that we can all have a shared basis from which to discuss their applicability to information security. Do not make financial or legal decisions based on any information in this talk. Talk to actual experts if you feel inspired to make financial or legal decisions after watching this talk, and do not rely on my information here. I am not an expert on insider trading regulations, but I have enough of a general idea to use them as an allegory for a security problem. Can I see everyone on video nod that you are not going to go and make any major financial decisions on the basis of this talk? All right, I see nodding heads. Perfect. Here, as an apology for beginning with a giant slide full of text about legal information, is a cat picture. A little bit of background about me. I have a sort of meta picture of another version of this talk where you can see that I do in fact exist below the shoulders and can leave the house in person when it is safe to do so. I am currently a software engineer with a focus on security at a small startup working on a game. I was previously a principal technical writer at an educational technology startup called Degreed. And overall, I was a technical writer for over a decade, the last 6 years of it full-time. I also hold security certifications, including the GSEC, which is a general information security certification, the GCIH, which is specific to security-related incident handling, and the GCIA, which is a network traffic analysis and packet analysis-based certification. And as you may have guessed from all of this, I am really interested in all of the different parts of technology and how they fit together, and the things that one discipline within a technical or non-technical field can bring to other disciplines to help expand the general field of knowledge. Today, we are going to start by explaining what Mosaic Theory is, because I don't expect that most of you have encountered this concept before, and it is a little bit of a concept, a complex concept from the world of finance. Then we're going to talk about some examples of Mosaic Theory in general, and some that are specific to the applications to technical communication. I'm going to then introduce you to a couple of types of things to watch out for when you're considering which information you want to make generally available, and conclude before allowing questions. I saw on the schedule that there is over an hour allotted to the presentation here, and I do not have a full hour's worth of content because I do want to make sure that not only am I not trying to stretch with extra filler and wasting your time, but also that we can talk a little bit at the end about ways that this can be applied to your specific situations. And so when we get into the questions section, feel free to ask general questions at any point. I can see when you post an emoji in the Zoom chat, and so I can call on people if you post a raised hand emoji. And then at the end, I'll ask that they end the recording before we go into any specifics of your individual companies or situations for reasons that are going to become clear throughout the talk. It's very common for people to not realize how much information they are giving away, and I am not here to trap you. So first, we are going to address the general concept of Mosaic Theory. I initially became aware of the concept of Mosaic Theory through Matt Levine's Bloomberg Opinion newsletter called Money Stuff. Specifically, in March of 2018, he had a column called Deductive Reasoning or Insider Trading, It's a Tough Call, that referenced the Mosaic Theory and was the first time I had encountered the term. But I fell down a little bit of a learning rabbit hole from there. It was a really cool concept, and it had very obvious implications for both technical writing, which was my primary function at work at the time, as well as information security, which was at the time a personal hobby and has since become the primary focus of my work. But what is insider trading, first of all? Insider trading, or illegal insider trading, generally refers to buying or selling a security in breach of a fiduciary duty or other relationship of trust and confidence on the basis of material non-public information about the security. Insider trading violations may include tipping such information, giving it to other people, securities trading by the person tipped, the person who receives the information they shouldn't have, and securities trading by those who misappropriate such information, which is a fancy term for finding it in your dumpster or hacking your servers and getting a hold of it through means other than being told or, being told as part of your job role or by someone who has access to it for legitimate reasons themselves. And what I really want to call attention to in this is this idea of material non-public information, because that is the core of what makes something a part of the Mosaic Theory versus just what possibly categorizes something as eligible for a defense under the Mosaic Theory versus being just overt insider trading. Every day, professional investors and research analysts work the phones to ferret out information about companies that can't be found by simply reading news releases, according to Andrew Ross Sorkin. But this sounds a whole lot like using that material non-public information. However, because these traders are considered to be members of the public and they are combining different bits of non-material information, this is considered to be good. This is called skilled financial analysis, and it is the core of the entire finance industry. So overall, you can categorize things into insider trading or skilled financial analysis. If something is insider trading, then we say that is bad. You are getting material information directly from a reputable source. So if you get information from someone you think is super sketchy and it's just coincidentally correct, that's not insider trading. But if you get information from, say, the person who is reporting on a piece of information, and it turns out that the information they were reporting on that they told you is the same as what they put in their report, then that's a much more reliable source, and that is more likely to count as insider trading. Another core portion of something counting as insider trading is that the information comes packaged together. This is not information gathered from a bunch of different places, but a single piece of information that is useful alone without combining it with information from other sources. On the skilled financial analysis side, you can take immaterial information from multiple sources, so individual pieces of information that would not give you something to trade on individually, but that can be useful when combined with each other. And you combine that information to create useful packages of information to trade on. These individual pieces of information are not as useful as the whole information that you are using. And so this is considered to be okay. So overall, if you get information from someone who you should believe is correct, and they are correct, and you are getting information all from one place and you act on it, that's a problem. if you are getting information from unreliable sources or from lots of sources, or the information was deliberately released to the public, then that's okay. This kind of has an analog in writing a report on public information as a technical writer. When you need to describe a commonly described concept as part of your concept information, you don't write conceptual documentation based on only one source, because that is plagiarism. Instead, you combine information from a bunch of different sources. And so if, as a writer, it would be considered plagiarism, as a financial analyst, it might be insider trading. I say might be more because I am not the SEC or your financial advisor than because I think someone would not categorize it as insider trading, to be clear. And so some examples to make this a little bit more concrete. First, we have an example that was insider trading. This is bad. The SEC won a jury trial against a Massachusetts man charged in a multi-year insider trading scheme as of this February. On 5 different occasions, this Massachusetts restaurateur traded on tips that he received from a close family friend who worked at Vistaprint. When questioned by the FBI, the restaurateur claimed that he didn't know anyone who worked at Vistaprint and denied having a close relationship with that specific insider and her husband, even though they had vacationed together recently. Some of the trades that he made were very risky, and without this information, it is unlikely that anyone would have invested such large amounts in an investment with that much risk, which is part of how the SEC figured out that they should investigate this person. A lot of sites say that this particular person was acquitted, but the SEC confirmation of conviction was published later, so I think there was an appeal or a higher court involved, and the conviction that I refer to here was in fact the latest information available. You will also note that this is a reasonably recent press release. I replace these examples every time. There's been a lot less new insider trading this year because people aren't hanging out with their friends anymore. And so I was not able to find any post-lockdown insider trading examples to refer to here. But when everyone is moving freely and hanging out with their friends often, I can usually, when I give a version of this talk, find something from within the last week or month. We have also another example of alleged insider trading, but this one still hasn't gone to trial, so it may be okay, but it sounds like it's likely enough to go that way that I feel confident using it as an example here. In this case, a former finance manager at Amazon.com who was responsible for preparing and reviewing the calculations used to finalize the company's earnings numbers for SEC filings, allegedly acquired information about the company's financial performance that was meant to be used in doing their job of preparing the reports. But they also tipped their husband off to that information, and her husband and his father allegedly traded on this information despite regular notices being provided to the employee reminding her not to pass material non-public information of the sort that was provided, or to make recommendations about the purchase or sale of Amazon securities. So as a member of the company in this role, you are routinely reminded to not do insider trading or anything that looks like it would be insider trading. And yet this person has done something that looked very much like insider trading. Whether or not it's insider trading, TBD, but it's leaning hard in one direction. A counterexample, though, this is an example of skilled financial analysis, and it's considered to be good. This particular case, Elkind versus Liggett and Myers, held that immaterial information was tipped to analysts who were able to combine it with public financial disclosures and other materials to form a basis for trading. So notice here that there was immaterial information, it was combined with public financial disclosures, public information, and other materials that were available to them to form a basis for trading. The case did also involve some insider trading that resulted from a subsequent leak, but it was not a 100% insider trading case because the tipping of immaterial information resulted in acquittals on several counts. While this case isn't as recent as the others that I reference, it's a really good comparative example if you want to dig deeper into what is and is not insider trading, because both elements that were deemed by the SEC and the Federal Court of Appeals to be insider trading, as well as some that were deemed to be skilled financial analysis, were addressed in this case. Plus, it's a popular case for analysis and teaching materials, so there's a lot out there to find, whereas the more recent examples that I use for what is insider trading tend to not have very much written about them yet. To review, insider trading is bad and you should not do it. Skilled financial analysis is considered good, and if you want to do that, that's fine. You should talk to your actual financial advisor or lawyer first. But why should I care about this as a technical writer? So far, we've talked a lot about securities and we've talked a lot about tipping information, and we want to provide information, right? But that's kind of the point. You also have information. You have access to a lot of information because a large point of your job is to distribute the appropriate information to the people who need it. As part of your role, you almost definitely have access to both material non-public information as well as immaterial or public information. Material non-public information you have includes details of unreleased features, internal approvals processes or QA processes, product roadmaps, user usage data or client usage data, as well as maybe information about your company's costs to provide a product or service that you deliver. The immaterial or the public information that you have access to as part of your job includes the press release archives, job ads, your company's website, maybe a colleague's lunch preferences, and your published documentation. There is one major thing that sits between material non-public information and public information in the case of details of unreleased features and published documentation, and it is you. You are the one who determines which side of this binary information falls on. And so I think it is important that you understand the risk that certain types of data can pose to the company if they do fall on the public side of that binary. You don't want to release material information in many cases. An example of a material information release is a data breach. Recently, the Hotels.com and Expedia provider on the back end, their hotel reservation platform, had compromised personal data belonging to millions of travelers through a misconfigured AWS S3 bucket. Customer data exposed included personally identifiable information, including full names, email addresses, national ID numbers, and guest phone numbers, as well as financial data such as credit card numbers, cardholder names, CVVs, and expiration dates. The bucket also contained the hotel reservation data, such as the reservation number, the dates, the price per night, the guest requests, and total cost, in addition to other information. And the open S3 bucket that contained this data was still in active use when security researchers found it, so it was leaking new booking information in real time. This is not something you want to be releasing. None of that is something you want to be releasing. And when you accidentally release material information, we do call that a data breach. However, on the other side, there's a lot of immaterial information that isn't a significant indicator of the company's business status, that is not necessarily something meant to be kept private, and that's commonly released, like travel opportunities that the company offers that you might see on your company's LinkedIn page or in a job ad. Employee sabbaticals, including whether the company offers them or not, and dates that certain employees may be planning to take them. Employee travel details, like someone posting that they are so excited the company provides super generous PTO and they're going to be in Maui for the next 2 weeks, which reflects very positively on the company, but also tells someone who has less altruistic goals that that particular person is not going to be around that week to see things. On-site or off-site timing, when you might have a lot of people outside the office or in a certain location, people's individual food preferences, and your company's release schedule. Even though this information is commonly released, it also carries risk when you do choose to release it. So what should you watch for? Obviously, we don't want to just stop releasing information. That is not very useful to anyone, especially as a TechCom department. And so we want to focus on some high-risk categories of information. These are tooling, such as the names of individual tools that teams are using, any tooling switches, where information is hosted, like who has your data. Compliance changes, such as new regulations that you are seeking to comply with, or regulations that you previously complied with that you are no longer putting as much of an emphasis on. Job posts and resignations, your employee sentiment, whether people are happy working there, whether people are possibly disgruntled working there, as well as considering your feature details and whether those particular feature details are more useful or more risky to release to the public. Another disclaimer, the tools that I'm about to mention are risky because they're useful, and banning them is not a good mitigation strategy. I personally really love an analogy from Sarah Harvey, a security and privacy engineer at Square, who compares data to Lego bricks. You can put them together to build cool things with them, but if you don't clean them up, they hurt a lot to step on. It's easier to avoid stepping on one if you have an idea of where they all are. And so I'm hoping everyone takes away an idea that these might be places your organization may have some piles of stray Lego. Tooling details are commonly included in job posts, in employees' role descriptions on LinkedIn or on networking sites. You might have hints at a company's tooling based on meetup membership or attendance. For example, if someone is attending Madcap Flare monthly meetup, then they're probably using Madcap Flare because that's a whole lot of time and energy to invest if they're not. Vendor forum membership. I know for a while Authorite had a user forum that a lot of people participated in, and it's worth considering whether you mention the name of your company when you participate in these types of venues. As well as event or networking conversations. We very commonly tell other people where we work, what we're working on, and what tools we're using there. With this information, someone can, for example, identify whether a vulnerability applies to your company and whether they might be able to exploit that to target your client's data. They may also be able to make a better case for pretending that they are an employee if they are trying to break into an office. Like, oh, I'm a representative from this vendor. I'm sorry, I forgot my badge. And then they're in the door, where they could potentially steal physical information when offices are a thing again, or if you're in one of the sectors that still has offices open. Compliance changes, such as are commonly included in LinkedIn posts, conference attendance, or course completion, where you say, like, I am now GDPR certified. That's an easy one to post because that one applies to basically everyone. And so you don't need to worry as much about that. People would be more concerned if you posted that you were GDPR certified when you've been working at a company for 5 years and you got GDPR certified maybe next year when everyone's already supposed to have been complying with it. That tells me as an outsider that maybe you were not complying for a long time, and there might be something in there that would be useful if I were to try to attack your company. Forum posts, again, people might mention, we are seeking to comply with this, or do you have any tips for complying with that? Additionally, meetup membership or attendance can hint at changes in upcoming compliance plans. Your job postings may have information about this. And when people join professional organizations or networks, that can also hint at compliance changes within the organization. In job posts and resignations, these may be featured on your career site, in your ATS or your company LinkedIn page, on recent alumni's LinkedIn or social media accounts, on your company or product blog, which a lot of technical writers are contributing to regularly, possibly to write something about. In some cases, I've seen even the specific areas of responsibility that the person who is leaving the company had, which lets someone who means the company harm know exactly where there's now a knowledge void and where there might be weaknesses in the organization that could be exploited. Again, this is not to say never write someone a going away post. They're cute, they're nice, they're fun. Just consider what information you're including in those posts when you write them. Additionally, this often comes up in networking conversations. Another category, I will say our next to last category to watch out for, is employee sentiment. This is reflected on social media, on press mentions, in Glassdoor reviews, on networking Slacks and Discords, and when people are going to offices, in conversations on public transit or near your office. This is especially worth considering if you're in the Bay Area, because there are people who are just hanging out on BART or in South Park or on Market Street in the coffee shops who know that there are a lot of tech companies nearby, and that if you just hang out long enough, someone will eventually tell you something useful. If someone overhears information in a public place, that is public information. And so maybe don't yell really loudly about your company's upcoming compliance changes on BART. I see this a lot. And it's something that we can improve our company's security posture just by being a little bit more aware of. I have saved for last, however, the category that is going to be most relevant in a technical writing capacity. When you are thinking about what to include in a coming soon listing or section, consider how valuable it might be to an attacker to know that that is not already in place. I know Zoom initially had announced, for example, that they had end-to-end encrypted video calls. And then they announced that they were going to have end-to-end encrypted video calls as of a certain date. And so that let potential attackers know that Zoom was vulnerable to eavesdropping now, because users were acting as if end-to-end encryption was already in place on their calls, while attackers had seen the subsequent press release to the effect of, whoops, it doesn't work. And so that's an example of something where you might be exposing your company to risk by releasing this publicly. Similarly, on your company blog, what feature details are you including? You obviously never want to include in a company blog something like a default password that would let someone override your user's security. But I have seen things like, here is how to reset your lights when you are in the other room, which sounds really nice and fun and convenient until you consider the amount of authentication that is blocking that. And in some cases, someone else could also reset your light from another room, which is very annoying. And it's just a light bulb, so they might turn off the light on you. It's not the worst, but there are worse implications for other sorts of technologies, especially with the growth of Internet of Things products. Additionally, consider whether you want to release descriptions of what individual employees are working on, because if you have, especially on a more compliance-heavy product in an industry like finance, and you say that these individuals are working on a team that's doing anti-money laundering information, then suddenly those employees' accounts are really valuable to any sort of hacker who's trying to find out how your anti-money laundering systems work so that they can circumvent them to launder money. Also consider your documented defaults and your documented settings. Are you telling someone about workarounds in particular? If this is too annoying and you don't want to go through these 7 steps, you can just do this one thing to skip it all and it'll be less secure, but that's fine, right? Well, now someone who wants to know how to access the information that is less secure can very easily gain access to that information. And finally, your documented procedures, processes, and overrides. You definitely don't want to just not document these things, but whether you include them in the user-facing documentation or only in internal documentation should take into account what information they could expose. Also consider the other information that you have, like individual preferences within your office or vacation responders. Are you telling people too much about where people are and when and what they are going to be doing at certain times? Are you sharing Instagram posts? And if you are sharing Instagram posts, are you showing parts of your office that maybe should not be publicly described? Or publicly visible, I should say. I am seeing a couple of chats coming through. Oh, someone is losing internet. Is the audio breaking up for everyone?
Audio's fine for me. It might just be on.
It's fine for me.
I just wanted to check that it's not my fault before I continue too far, because the last thing I want to do is subject everyone to terrible audio.
No, it's fine with me. No problem at all.
It's fine here.
Do we have any other questions before we go into this next section? Okay. So what now? We've heard a lot about all of the things that we could be considering. What do? We can't just stop releasing the information. Well, try not to worry too much about it. do consider the impact that the information you are releasing can have. And I actually have another talk that I gave recently to Write the Docs Bay Area that we can share a link to along with this afterwards, where I talk a little bit about what specific types of documentation can cause specific types of problems. But in a very general sense, just be aware that the information you are releasing is becoming public information. And even if it's material information, it is actionable for anyone on the outside, whether they are someone who you want to align with or someone who is more on the insider trading side of things, who means your company harm and who wants to cause those extra disclosures of material information that we all try to avoid. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can reach me on Twitter at Maggie Fero, on LinkedIn, or Degree doesn't have a messaging system, but you can see what new things I've been learning about there if you are interested. And with that, I think we should stop the recording and I can take questions about specific applications for things that you're working on.
Will do, Maggie. But before we end the recording, can we please give a big round of applause for Maggie?
Yay.
Yay.
All right, stop it now.